But the other thing I think that's going on is that with the yen and the weakness of the yen is a big problem for currencies of the rest of the region. And the BOK has talked about this in one of its recent reports. And basically, it shows this chart, which looks at the relationship between, the won, the yen, the Taiwanese dollar, and the CNY. Whereas previously the CNY looked like it was an anchor for the currency. It doesn't look an anchor for the region. It doesn't look like that anymore. Instead, it all looks about the yen. And the explanation for the BOK from this is that it's really because of export similarity. And in particular, if you look at export, like the overlap between the sort of exports that Korea produces and the sort of exports that Japan produces, that overlap in terms of things that are being sold to the US is the greatest between Japan and Korea than it is between the other economies. And as a result, the weakness of the yen is something that then weighs on the won, because the markets would worry about the competitiveness of Korea if the won appreciated too much. So there is these sort of arguments that you can make. And I don't really want to dismiss them entirely, but I do think it doesn't make a lot of sense. What we're seeing right now is, again, if you think about the difference between Japan's economy and Korea's economy, there is a semiconductor cycle in Japan too. It is something which is helping offset some of the sluggishness in auto sales. It means that there is some sort of growth happening in the economy. It's also something that can be seen in the stock market in Japan, where some of the leading companies, again, right now are all into semiconductors and AI and so on. So it's not that it's not a phenomenon in Japan, but there's a huge difference in the economies, right? There's a clear acceleration in growth in Korea this year. There's a clear increase in the current account surplus and the trade surplus. In Japan, it does look likely that there will be a trade deficit this year because of the increase in oil prices. It's just not in the same league in terms of the impact of semiconductors as in Korea. And yet, the argument is that the yen is something that really matters for the won. So I'm not particularly persuaded by the argument. That said, it is what it is. We can see in the markets that seems to be a correlation between the valuation of the yen and the valuation of the won. And so what we now do think about is, if that's the case, what's the implications of that? And again, I think, to my mind, that gets back to inflation. That in a way, what we have in Korea is an economy where the economy would suggest the currency should be strengthening, but it's not. The currency should be strengthening because the economy is doing reasonably well from a macro perspective. That would imply that if the currency doesn't appreciate, I would think that you start to see greater inflationary pressure in Korea's economy as a result. And so this is the third thing that we should be thinking about in terms of the inflationary risks for the region.